When did you last come here? It was 1932, right? That's right. Stan Laurel's funny face made a lot of people laugh, but there was a broken heart behind that smile. His son died after only 9 days. One by one, his marriages ended. His wife said he was trying to bury her alive. He lost all of his money in his houses, and Stan lost a piece of himself when Hardy died in 1957. But what happened to him in his last years was much worse. It's almost impossible not to cry. On June 16, 1890, he was born Arthur Stanley Jefferson in a small house in Ulverston, England. The theater was their life. His dad ran stages, wrote plays, and did acting. Stan's mother used to work in a store before becoming an actor, but Stan was always sick as a child. While his parents went on tour, he stayed with his grandma out of the public eye. It was still too much for him to handle. He played with puppets, made toy theaters, and put on shows for his friends, dressing up and putting on makeup. It wasn't just a fun thing to do. It was a quiet practice run for what was to come. Everything changed for him when he was 15. His family went to Glasgow so that they could be closer to the theater that his dad ran, the Metropole. Stan got into Queen's Park School, but reading wasn't really his thing. He often missed class. He instead sneaked off to play with a small group of his friend Willie Walker. It wasn't fancy, but it was true. A crowd which school never could have given him. That was all he ever wanted. In 1906, just before he turned 16, he broke into the famous Britannia Panopticon Music Hall. He went on stage in one of his dad's favorite clothes without telling his dad. People laughed, but what really shocked him was seeing his father looking back at him from the crowd. Stan ran off stage in a panic and tore his coat on a hook. His mind was racing. After the show, though, his dad just told him, "Not bad, son. Have a whiskey and soda." That was it. He deserved to be on stage. Soon after, his dad arranged for him to work for a moving pantomime company. They put on comedic versions of fairy tales. It was hard. He had to learn how to move, time his moves, and read the crowd. They put on show after show, sometimes more than one a day. He learned quickly, though, it wasn't just kid shows. They were places to learn. After that came Fred Carnot. In Britain, Carnot was the best comedian. He was in charge of a group of artists who were known for drawing faces. Stan was hired by Carnot when he was 19 years old. Soon after, he was put under the tutelage of a young comedian named Charlie Chaplin. That was really big. They did shows together, toured together, and even lived together while on tour. People didn't say anything on Carnot's shows. Everything was made of matter. Stan had to learn how to use his body, time his moves, and be subtle. He paid close attention to Chaplin and never tried to be like him. He was getting into his own groove. Carnot's group went on another trip to America in 1912. Stan had no idea how this trip would alter his life at the time. He was having a hard time in England and was just barely getting by. It was just the right time for the offer to tour the United States. He believed it would only last for a short time. It wasn't. Chaplin went to Hollywood after the show was over. There were no more bookings. The group broke up. A lot of them went home. Stan didn't. He stayed. He was 22 years old, broke, and full of hope. He knew that America had something good in store for him. He went from one vaudeville show to another for years, often playing Chaplin-like parts. He made a duo with May Dahlberg, who was his partner on and off stage. Even though they weren't married, they lived together like they were. They made a short movie called Nuts in May in 1917. It didn't do very well, but it was his first movie. Stan was at his best in that scene, physical, awkward, and cute. The fact that he stole a steamroller in the movie became a running joke in later years. At this point, May told him that Stan Jefferson had 13 letters. He changed his name to Stan Laurel because she thought it was bad luck. The new name made me feel better and lighter, but things didn't go well right away. He was stuck for years in small parts, strange sketches, and forgotten sitcoms. The people in charge didn't know what to do with him, even though he was funny. Then Joe Rock showed up. By 1924, Rock saw how good Stan could be. But May was now a bother. She fought with directors, demanded parts, and stand behind the scenes. Rock agreed to make 12 movies with one condition. May had to leave. Rock bought her a plane ticket to Australia and paid her to leave when she said no. It was rough, but it made room. Stan made funny movies like Detained, Pie, Dr. Pickle and Mr. Pride, and more. They weren't big hits, but they did show something important. He had found his own way. Gentle, quiet, and expressive. He didn't try to stop the chaos. People laughed at how he responded. He joined Hal Roach Studios in 1925, but not as a star. He was chosen to write and direct. In a little more than a year, he was in charge of at least 22 movies. One of them was a sitcom called Yes, Frau. Yes, Nanette. Oliver Hardy played a small part in it. No one thought much of it at the time. The only thing Laurel did was watch it. But when Hardy hurt himself in the kitchen, everything changed. He was in the hospital, and the company needed someone to fill in. To get Laurel, they called. He wasn't happy about it, but he went back to playing for a short movie called Get Young. Just writing in would be the one choice that would change his life forever. Laurel and Hardy had worked together before. Many years ago, they made a movie called The Lucky Dog in 1921. It didn't do well. I don't even remember it. They worked together in a few scenes, but they weren't a team. They didn't see each other again for 2 or 3 years. Hardy kept going to work. He was the bad guy, the good guy, and he even dressed as a woman. That group helped him make 177 short movies. However, Laurel was having a hard time. He tried to do it by himself. He tried a number of companies. He tried several names, but none of them worked. In America, people mostly only saw him as a priest copy or a silly thief. It wasn't enough. They didn't know what to do with him, not even the people behind the mic. In 1926, he went back and forth between Metro and Universal before going back to Hal Roach. Somebody knew how to use his skills, but he himself didn't. Bruce Laurel was his real name, but he changed it to Stan Laurel after working with May Dahlberg on the movie Nuts in May. The law didn't let him change his name until 1931. He went through a rough time in his life, but it helped him become a better comedian. He was getting ready for something bigger, but he didn't know it yet. That thing came in 1927. The title was Putting Pants on Philip. It was their first real movie together. Laurel was a Scottish boy in a kilt who had no idea what he was doing. Hardy played his American uncle, who was embarrassed. It was an easy story that worked. Laurel came up with the idea after hearing an old story from a friend. A lot of people loved it. Film critics later said it was one of the most unique comedies they had ever seen. The look of Stan and Ailey wasn't quite there yet, but there was magic. A director at Roach Studios named Leo McCarey saw the spark right away. This one line led to 107 movies over the course of 30 years. Keep them together. The sound then came. Most artists who worked in silent movies lost their jobs because of it. That is not true for Laurel and Hardy. They put out Unaccustomed as We Are in 1929. It worked as their first talking picture. Laurel's voice was soft and high, almost like a child's. It fit, though, and made people laugh. Laurel and Hardy moved forward while other entertainers fell. Laurel began to take charge behind the scenes. He changed parts of the story. He pushed people to improvise. He worked on the movie for hours. A lot of people knew who was really in charge, even though there were directors and writers on set. Roach later said he did it. Laurel was in charge of the show. He was the main author by 1929. When they wrote, it was crazy and disorganized, but they had a lot of great ideas. Hardy wasn't bothered. Stan Laurel was having a great time in May 1930. He joked, "I just did the gags. That was enough, especially after falling into so many mud holes." He and Oliver Hardy were becoming one of Hollywood's most popular comic teams. His wife Lois had their second child that same month. It was a boy. He was given the name Stanley Robert Laurel. He was born 2 months early and very small, but their home was full of hope and happiness for a short time. A lot of fans don't know this, but Stan's real name was still Arthur Stanley Jefferson at that time. He wasn't really known as Stan Laurel until 4 years later. That meant the baby's real last name wasn't Laurel, but Jefferson. Still, having the little boy around felt like a new start. Stan and Lois already had a daughter, who was born in 1927. They also had a son now. Stan was very busy with shooting, but the couple still wanted another child. He was now here. That happiness didn't last long, though. The child was too weak. From the moment he was born, his little body had a hard time. There was only 9 days between his birth and death. Stan and Lois were crushed by the loss. It wasn't just a broken heart, it was a hurt that would not get better. Stan didn't talk about it much in public. He made a lot of people laugh, but he was sad on the inside. It was even worse because of the time. While everyone else was happy about Laurel and Hardy, Stan was having a terrible dream. The doctors told them not to do it. Back then, there were no high-tech tools to help babies who were born before they were due. It felt like a fight every hour, and they lost in the end. Stan's May was never the same after that. Friends said that around his son's birthday, he would often shut down and be alone. He would sometimes not show up on set between scenes. He'd come back with red eyes but still be funny as ever. It seemed like he laughed to hide the pain. Stan's fame reached a whole new level between 1930 and 1935. In just 5 years, he made about 45 movies. A lot of them were big hits. The Music Box even got an Academy Award in 1932. Things were going badly at home, though. Stan and Lois's sadness over the death of their son slowly drove them apart. It wasn't working to keep things together. Their sadness had put up a wall between them. Stan worked longer hours, so they got farther apart. After 8 years of marriage, they split up by the end of 1934. After the fact, court records showed that they had not lived together for more than a year. Stan got lost in his work. Lois cut herself off from other people. Their daughter, Lois Jr., spent most of her time with her mom. She was only 7 years old. After many years, she had a full life and died in 2017 at the age of 89. Stan got married again just 1 month after his divorce. Mary Ruth Rogers was her name. Friends thought he was running away from his past, but the marriage didn't work out. Stan said something shocking in court. He loved his first wife, Lois, still. Virginia must have been very sad. Even though they got a divorce in 1937, they didn't stop being together. Stan got married to her again in 1941, but they split up again in 1946. There were no children from either marriage, but the story of how they were married and divorced spread all over Hollywood. Stan wasn't done with love or trouble, though. Stan got married again on January 1, 1938. This time, it was Vera Ivanova Shwalova, a Russian actor. Her name was Ilana. Everyone was shocked by the wedding. It happened just a few days after his last breakup. Virginia said he was cheating on her. Time was off, and so was the relationship. Just to be sure, they got married 3 times in 4 months. The news outlets loved it. Their fights made the news. Stan was now known as the funny guy whose love life was a mess. The most crazy part then came. Ilana said that Stan tried to bury her alive in 1938. Indeed, she did say that he tried to kill her in their own yard. The claim was crazy. There was a lot of doubt. Stan had always played a sweet and silly role. Fans were now hearing about a bad and scary side of him. Ileana left their house and told everyone what happened. Even though there was never complete proof, the harm was already done. His character was badly hurt. The marriage was over by 1940. The amount of money Ileana was willing to give up was $6,500, which was a lot of money at the time. Between 1926 and 1946, Stan married 5 different women, 8 times. 8 times. Some weddings were not legal, and others were held again. It seemed like a soap show. All of this happened while he was making classic comedies for the big screen. After everything, he got married one last time in 1946. Her name was Ida Kitova Raphael. She sang opera for a living. Stan passed away in 1965, ending this 19-year marriage. Ida stayed with him. He had ups and downs, and after Oliver Hardy died in 1957, he got worse. She was there for him in his last days. The year was 1932, and for Laurel and Hardy, everything changed. They had been making people laugh for years, but the Music Box made them famous. Getting the piano looked easy. This piano wasn't just heavy, though. It had to be dragged up a stairs that went on and on. It kept falling every time they got close. While people in the seats laughed out loud as the piano fell, it seemed like fate was against them. Not only were they being funny, they were making history. They won an Oscar for that short picture. The very first time out award given for a comic short. In fact, that ladder is still there, almost 100 years later. It's like holy ground for tourists who go there, but most people didn't know this. He wasn't just the guy who shook his head and cried when things went wrong. He was the brains, the writer, the editor, and the one who really made the decisions behind the scenes. By 1929, he was in charge of all the artistic work. Stan didn't have to do something if the director did not want it. Their director, Hal Roach, said that straight out. Ew. He had the last word. But Laurel didn't take credit. He changed scenes, timed every joke, and cut movies over and over again until the rhythm was just right. Hardy was okay with it too. He once told me that I made my living by falling in mud and getting hit all day. The magic of their screen work came from contrast. Hardy was big. He was over 6 feet tall and weighed about 280 pounds. Always making a mess, he looked like a boss and talked like he knew everything. Laurel was tiny, spoke more softly, and seemed lost. But don't believe it. Behind his sweet face was a smart, funny mind. On and off screen, he was the one that people didn't think much of. It wasn't typical for a funny man and a straight man to be together. It was their turn to be the fool. That was what made them unique. And people during the Great Depression could relate to that. They could relate to the confusion, the fights, and the laughter. Their work plan was very tough. They made more than 40 movies between 1930 and 1940. That's more than 4 each year. There were more than just talking heads for the camera. Hardy and Laurel did their own tricks. We didn't do any doubles or tricks. We just fell and got hurt. They kept moving a 500B piano up and down in the music box until their bodies gave out. Behind the laughs, you could see the sweat, the limps, and the real pain. That's just one movie. They shot 5 full shows just in 1935. Tit for Tat, The Bohemian Girl, Bonnie Scotland, Thicker Than Water, and Tit for Tat. People can't handle that kind of scheduling. But not those people. Stan Laurel didn't fall all of a sudden. It took a long time, was embarrassing, and broke my heart. It began in the late 1930s when his business partnership with Hal Roach ended. Roach set up the contract so that Laurel and Hardy's terms would end at different times. It was a strong move. When Laurel's deal was up, Roach didn't wait. It was in Zenobia that he put Hardy with another comic, Harry Langdon. It hit you in the face. Roach even thought about putting a new show called The Hardy Family in its place of Laurel. Laurel went after them. He went after Roach. A dangerous move that might have ended everything. They finally got a place to live, and Laurel came back for a short time to finish 2 more movies, A Chump at Oxford and Saps at Sea. But that was it. It was the end of their time at Roach Studios. There were too many cracks. In the early 1940s, when they moved to 20th Century Fox and MGM, it looked like a step up, but it wasn't. It was a terrible mess. O was always the one who came up with the funny ideas. He changed the script, directed scenes without getting credit, and ran crazy but fun, brainstorming meetings. But at the new workshops, he was just an artist hired to work there. Nothing, not even a say. From 1941 to 1944, they made 8 movies. It cost between $300,000 and $450,000 for each one. The movies made money, but not a lot. The magic was still gone. There was no longer any work by Laurel and Hardy. They were made things. The studios only thought about making money. It was too late when Fox gave them a little more freedom to be creative. It was too late to fix the harm. The Bullfighters, their last movie for Hollywood, came out in 1945. The point was to make you laugh. Even though Laurel played 2 parts, which made me think of his silent film days, something didn't feel right. The power wasn't there. The power wasn't there. People laughed at the movie, but it wasn't like old Laurel and Hardy movies. The Bay-Off section at Fox was being shut down behind the scenes. They were no longer seen as stars by the company. They were just old comedians from another time. So this movie was their farewell to America. Then Kay showed up in 1950. This was meant to be their big comeback. It was a European production. They had full creative control, and they were each going to get $150,000 plus profits. But it turned into a bad dream. People on the group spoke 6 different tongues. There was no more communication. Key. It was a mess filming. Laurel got laid up. It was dysentery and an infection in his groin. He lost more than 40 pounds. Things got worse for Hardy with his heart. It wasn't helping that he was 300 pounds and hot. It took almost a year to shoot something that was supposed to take 12 weeks. Yee. Every day the plot had to be changed. Fans were shocked when the movie finally came out in 1951. She seemed like a ghost. The jokes were not funny. A big cave fell over. It was the last movie they ever made. After that, they were going to do some live shows, but Hardy's health kept getting worse. It was over by 1954. It was just as bad in Laurel's personal life. He paid alimony to 3 ex-wives at the same time by 1946. Lois Nielsen, his first wife, left him in 1934. He got married to Virginia Ruth Rogers in 1935, but they split up by 1937. In 1938, he married Ilana Shulova. It was over too. He gave her $6,500 just to stop being Laurel. He married Virginia Ruth again in 1941. In 1946, they split up again. Court papers showed that he was paying alimony with 65% of his income. 65%. He was still having a hard time, even though he was making a lot of money from movies. It seemed like things couldn't get any worse until May. Dahlberg showed up. She used to perform with him in theater. She said he had promised to take care of her forever. She sued him in 1937. She brought scrapbooks and stories to court. It made Laurel look sick just to hear them. People paid attention to the court case. Dahlberg said she wanted $350 a month, which is around $6,500 today. Laurel had to pay legal fees and a new monthly bill, even though the case was solved without a fuss. Laurel lost about $360,000 from 1937 to 1944. Today, that's more than $6.05 million. He lost the money because he put his trust in the wrong people, mostly his cousin Edgar, who didn't know much about money. Edgar put money into oil businesses that didn't work out and lost $175,000 all at once. On top of that, he missed Laurel's taxes for 3 years. That got them a $42,000 fine from the IRS. Laurel's drinking made things worse. He bought 3 fancy cars one night in 1940 after drinking a lot. He wasn't even able to drive them. He couldn't see well enough. In 1941, he also failed to get a fair deal with 20th Century Fox. A career. Sornby. No artistic freedom and no claim to the characters. He was just getting paid to work. He was getting money from Hardy to pay his bills by 1944. His home life also fell apart. In 1942, he had to sell his 18-room house in Cheviot Hills for 40% less than what it was worth. It used to have a pool, tennis fields, and a private movie theater, but now they're all gone. The furniture was sold at auction. The 1938 Rolls-Royce Phantom III he loved so much only brought $1,200. He was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica by 1943. Friends said he looked like he had lost. Things became so bad in 1945 that his wife Ida had to work at a department store to pay the bills. He was still in movies, but the companies were the ones who were making the most money. He fought Hal Roach in court for 4 years, from 1935 to 1939. It all began when he learned that Roach had broken their contracts on purpose. In 1935, Laurel sued Roach, but Roach had 7 lawyers. That was all Laurel had. He was called unreliable and tough by Roach in public. The case went on for a long time and drained him. Hardy stayed with Roach and worked with Harry Langdon in Zenobia. Fans were very sad. Laurel is said to have spent $50,000 on the court case. He never got that money back. The relationship was broken even after coming back for 2 more movies with Roach. When he later signed with 20th Century Fox, it was the same thing. Another contract with no creative rights, and another company that saw him as just another employee. They didn't make another movie together after Adelke came out in 1951. They had to slow down because their health was getting worse. They came back stronger and with more energy after a few months, though. They went back to Europe in 1952, but not to make a movie. Instead, they did live shows. He even made a new sketch called A Spot of Trouble, which was a big hit. After that, in 1953, they did an act called Birds of a Feather. Then they went through one of the saddest times in their lives. On September 9, 1953, they got to Cove, Ireland. They were shocked by what took place. There were hundreds of boats all around the harbor. Whistles went off. On the docks, people yelled and cheered. After the fact, Stan said they had no idea what was going on. Then the town's church bells began to ring their theme song, Dance of the Cuckoo. The sound filled the room, Both men cried. They will always remember that moment. They went to Ireland, Scotland, and England on their tour. At first, some shows had empty seats, but as word got out, more and more people showed up. They put on shows for 8 months. Their last show was at the Palace Theatre in Plymouth on May 17, 1954. Olivia Wilde had a small heart attack right after the curtain fell. Even though the tour was over, a local review still said nice things about them, saying they were still funny and smart. The tough part then came. Docs told Hardy in 1956 that his heart was not healthy. He tried to make things better. He lost more than 45 kg, or over 100 lb. People used to laugh about that big belly, but now it was gone. Things went badly. Even though the weight was lost, Hardy had a huge stroke. He was stuck. He was unable to talk. That was a terrible turn for a man whose whole life was about how to say things and on time. He never did another show. He was with Stan Laurel the whole time. He came by a lot, but didn't say anything. Hardy shouldn't feel bad about not being able to answer, so he didn't. It was possible for the two guys, who had met through silent movies, to talk to each other without words. They talked, showed things with their eyes, and used signs. That was enough. They were connected without words. But the sickness took everything away. To pay his bills, Hardy had to sell his house. The truth was seen by everyone. Being famous didn't mean having a lot of money. Not back then. In August 1957, Hardy passed away. After 8 years, Stan Laurel came after, 74. It took place in Santa Monica on February 23, 1965. Stan was still making jokes right up until the end. He told his nurse that he was dying to go skiing right away. He was stuck in bed, but the joke was pure Laurel. It was silly, funny, and easy to remember. Even though he hadn't played in 10 years, his energy never went away.